Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Retirement Rescue Radio, and I'm your host, Nate Miller, and today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite subject, long-term care. Yeah, I know. Don't turn it off yet. So big reason we're talking about this. So there's some very little known laws that are still in effect right now that could actually wreak havoc, maybe not necessarily on your plan, but on your kids. And so what we're going to be talking about is called filial responsibility laws. And the reason is because, you know what, your parents, they might have clothed you, bandaged your skin knees, fed you dinner for years. And now it might be time for you to return the favor, figuratively speaking. But also in some states, they could actually make it your legal responsibility to support your parents financially. And so without some proactive planning, you might be at risk of footing some or all of the bill for your parents' high-end medical debt. And so let me explain first off what filial laws are. In the United States, they can impose a duty, usually upon the adult children, for the support of their impoverished parents. And in some cases, that duty is even extended to other relatives. So it could go, to the kids, it could go to like uncles, aunts, cousins, stuff like that, right? And so such laws could be enforced by governmental or even private entities, and maybe at the state or national level as well. And so while most filial responsibility laws, they contemplate civil enforcement, some of them actually have criminal penalties for adult children or close relatives who fail to provide for family members when they're challenged to do so. So what does all that gobbledygook mean? It means that basically there's many states that have laws that require the adult children to be financially responsible for their parents' necessities of life when the parents don't have the means to pay for them on their own. And the extent of this responsibility can vary by state, but a lot of times it's like nursing homes or other long-term care facilities that can use these laws as a means to seek reimbursement from the adult children for any unpaid bills. And so the funding copayments for your parents' doctor visits is one thing, but absorbing it like $100,000 bill for a nursing home stay is an entirely different level of commitment. And so unfortunately, filial responsibility laws may not differentiate much between those two. Right. And so if you live in a filial state and your parents start accumulating healthcare bills that they can't pay, the healthcare provider might be within its rights to sue you and win. And the filial statutes, they haven't been uniformly enforced in the past, but a lot of experts are now predicting a rise in the enforcement going forward. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing and the senior population is growing. We'll talk a little bit here on what the whole COVID-19 has done for that as well. And so filial responsibility court claims are one way that healthcare providers can recoup those costs when we have 5- and 6-figure medical bills that are just going to go unpaid, right? And so important point, though, to note is that a filial responsibility law is not the same thing as that provision that we have here in the U.S. About which requires a look back of 5 years in the financial records of anybody that's trying to apply for Medicare to ensure that that person didn't just give away assets in order to qualify for Medicaid. And so lower and middle income households, they rarely have to worry about these laws if the parent has applied for and qualifies for Medicaid, but that situation could change when the care is necessary before the parent has qualified for Medicaid. And it's at least where the adult children are deemed to have sufficient incomes to pick up the tab. So what does that mean? So let's say you're a parent listening to this and you've got some kids, maybe 3 kids, say, right? Maybe 2 of them, they earn an okay living, but one of them is earning a pretty darn good living. They could actually just go after that one person, that one child of yours that's making really good money. They're a doctor or they're a lawyer, they're whatever they are, right? That they're making a lot of money, engineer, something. So yeah, they can go after one. Don't have to go after all of them, but they could go after one. So first off, I want to give you the names of the states that have these filial laws. So if I throw out a name of a state, you happen to live in that state, this is why planning for long-term care expenses is so important. As I tell almost everybody that walks in my door and sits down at our conference room table, is that long-term care, I feel, is one of the least planned for areas in retirement. Like, nobody wants to go into a nursing home. Nobody wants to, ever think of themselves as not being able to take care of themselves. Nobody wants to think that way. Nobody wants to even approach that subject. But what we know based on statistics is that once you reach age 65, you've got about a 7 out of 10 chance that you're going to have some type of a long-term care event happen in your lifetime. And why there may not be, I may not be a big fan of just like straight up long-term care insurance. I am a big fan of planning for long-term care expenses, because right now, according to, I think Genworth, the average cost of a long-term care, semi-private room, in a long-term care facility is about $90,000 a year. And so that can eat through a nest egg pretty darn quick. So the names of the states. So we've got Alaska, Arkansas, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico. I know that's not a state, but it's a U.S. territory, right? Rhode Island, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia. So congratulations, those of you that are listening to this in Kansas, where that's the vast majority of all my clients are. We are not one of them one of the states that is part of the filial responsibility law. So we kind of get off the hook when it comes to that. But all of those of you that are listening to this that are in one of those states that I just named, you could be subject to this. Matter of fact, it's really bad if you live in Pennsylvania, apparently, because every place that I was looking into all these filial laws, they're all citing basically the same court case. And it happened in 2012. And most of the time it says filial responsibility laws were rarely enforced in years past. But in 2012, this particular case in Pennsylvania actually bucked that trend. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld a lower court's decision in Healthcare and Retirement Corporation of America versus Pittis. John Pittis was the name. It held the adult son liable for almost $93,000. That was a debt that resulted from about 6 months of skilled nursing care and treatment received by his mom at a Pennsylvania facility. And the nursing home sued her son directly before even trying to collect anything from Medicaid. And a court in Pennsylvania also ruled that the son must pay according to that Pennsylvania filial law, because they concluded that the state didn't have a duty to consider the woman's other possible sources of payment, including a husband and 2 other adult children. So even if you have siblings who should share in the filial responsibility, the healthcare provider can come after just you alone. And if a judgment is rendered against you, it's now up to you to have to sue your siblings to recover their share of the debt if you don't have a good enough relationship and you actually need them to foot the bill. I just don't like the idea of having to sue, your brothers and sisters just to get money for helping out mom and dad. But, obviously it happens. So, and this is because federal law forbids nursing facilities from requiring payment guarantees from third parties as a condition of admittance, and patients can't be, quote, evicted for their lack of such a guarantee. But the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program does allow the states to look at the patient's estate for reimbursement of benefits after that beneficiary has died. And so that fits along these filial responsibility laws. And so now, even how COVID-19 may affect all of these filial responsibilities, given that the laws may require adult children to pay for their elderly parents' medical expenses, it is possible that the COVID-19 pandemic could bring more of those laws to the forefront. Remember, most of the time in the past, other than that, outlier there in 2012 in Pennsylvania, like I said, most of them hadn't really been enforced. But since COVID-19 happened that could cause them to start coming back up, because that disease has disproportionately affected the elderly, and people between ages 65 and 74 are 5 times more likely to be hospitalized than those between 18 and 29, and according to the CDC. And for people that are age 75 to 84, that multiple is actually 8 times. So a lot more people going into nursing homes now as a result of that. And now, a simple doctor's visit isn't likely enough to call the filial responsibility into play. At least, as far as the elderly are concerned, most have Medicare and supplements that can cover those, normal medical bills. But they see a greater potential for the filial responsibility issues when it comes to long-term care. And especially thanks to the pandemic, bringing some of those more into light. And according to John Ross, he's an elder law attorney at Ross and Schulmeyer. He says that we've seen a number of people racking up nursing home bills because of a combination of the patient being isolated and the family not having access to information to apply for Medicaid. And that creates a pretty tough situation in which patients' bills are coming in, but their family members may not have adequate resources to pay them, and that debt just continues to grow. And it's the unreimbursed medical expenses like that where the filial responsibilities typically pop up, and where the providers will actually take legal action. So I would say steps to take to plan for this, or just some additional long-term care solutions that could come up. I'd say the first step is, if you're listening to this and you are retired or you're very close to it, start the conversation with your kids. If you are right now of the age where you're listening to this and you have adult parents, like you've got child parents, right? You've got parents that might be elderly and could face some of these decisions. Bring the conversation up, right? As awkward as it might be, you might have to ask your parents about their finances, and in particular, any plans that they have made for long-term care specifically. I did have another podcast episode where I interviewed a gal that was talking about having that conversation. She's even written a book called Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk. And so it's about addressing this conversation. And the thing is, if your parents are wealthy and you're not really at the risk of being sued for the bills, unpaid healthcare providers would rather go after your parents' assets before going after yours, right? The danger zone is that when your parents are too wealthy to qualify for Medicaid, but not wealthy enough to cover all the hefty medical or long-term care bills on their own. And it's like, that always seemed to be like, my dad had, I can't remember the exact saying, but he talked about that a lot, where like we were too poor to make any money, but we were too rich to get any help, I guess, growing up. And so it's that like forgotten about middle ground there, where you're not wealthy, but you're not poor. And so therefore you really don't qualify for anything at that point. So that's really the danger zone, when your parents are not when your parents are so wealthy they can pay for all of it, not when your parents are so impoverished that they're going to be qualifying for Medicaid right off the bat, but it's more so going to be those that are too wealthy for Medicaid, but not so wealthy that they are able to really withstand one of those big long-term care events from happening. And so if you are in that danger zone, first off, find out what plans that your parents might have, if they've made any, for long-term care. And to give you some of the common strategies that could be used, or some things that you might want to look into when you're starting to figure out, what do we have? Oh, we don't have anything. We need to figure out how we're going to plan for this. Because I think it's always a good idea to try to shift some of that burden, some of that financial burden, to a third party, so that you don't have to bear the bulk of it, right? And so some of those common strategies, first off, could just include normal long-term care insurance, your traditional long-term care insurance. It could work well. It does have some downfalls. There's usually the use it or lose it provision if you don't end up needing it. I'm using air quotes if you're looking, or if you're listening to this on just the audio podcast, you get lucky, right? And you pass away suddenly. So you don't need any long-term care. Well, then, yeah, all that's pretty much gone. In most cases, they do have some options now where you might be able to get some type of a refund. But the insurance company also holds all the cards, and so they can increase those premiums at any time. And then if you've got any additional features, like maybe you've got a cost of living adjustment that it was factored in, that's called a rider. You've got a cost of living adjustment rider. on there, they may ask you to just like to lower that premium once they increase it, because they can increase it any single year. And I've had plenty of my clients that have come into my office. They had long-term care insurance before we ever met. And now they're getting letters saying that they're going to be increasing the rates 47% this year and 47% next year. And they're like, we don't want to pay that. So they usually send a letter with a long list of the additional options, the additional riders that are attached to that policy, and saying, do you want to keep this or get rid of it? If you get rid of it, it'll bring your premium back down to here. Or if you get rid of this option, it'll bring your premium back down to here. Do you want this option, this option, this option? So now you're kind of like trying to pull all the different levers to either, maybe you make it a paid up policy, so you don't have to pay for it anymore, but the amount of premiums you paid into it, that's now your benefit, right? So there's all kinds of different options there. And right now, the average cost, and I looked this up on I think it was a Mass Mutual. Let me make sure on that. Mutual of Omaha. I'm sorry, a Mutual of Omaha long-term care insurance calculator. And so the average cost for, call it $200 a day benefit, which ends up only being about $6,000 a month. And the average cost right now is going to be about, for a semi-private room, I mentioned, remember, was about $90,000. So the $6,000 a month, that'll cover $72,000. So $200 a day or $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year. That benefit for a 65-year-old couple is around $315 a month or $37.80 a year. And that really doesn't have any bells and whistles, really. It wasn't like it had a cost of living adjustment or anything like that. So long-term care expenses today are not going to be long-term care expenses 20 years from now. And so that $6,000 a month might not go nearly as far 20 years from now as what it goes now. So that's one option. But like I said, the insurance company holds all the cards. They can choose to raise the rates at any time. And most of the time what you paid in, if you end up not needing to use it, all that money is just gone at that point. So some other options could be life insurance with long-term care benefits. Pretty much most policies outside of term, so permanent life insurance, have riders included as part of the policy nowadays, to where you can have access to that death benefit to pay for long-term care expenses. And so now the way I look at that is, you still have to pay for it, just like you do for the long-term care insurance. But the difference is now, since it's life insurance, the premium doesn't change. It's not like the premium can go up every single year. The premium's locked in. And so that's one benefit. And if you get, I'm using air quotes again here, lucky, right, and pass away suddenly, well, all that money is not gone, because there's still a death benefit. Somebody is getting that money and it's coming in tax-free. So in my opinion, that could be a better choice, a better option to help pay for long-term care benefits. And there's even life insurance policies now that can be like a single premium pay, a single lump sum premium, where you just put in one amount and you never have to put in any more. And still, whatever that death benefit is, you could have access to that for long-term care benefits. So that could be an avenue. There's also annuities with additional long-term care features within the income rider as well. And the way that most of those work is whatever income amount that you're getting, that income will double for a period of 5 years or until you pass away, whichever happens first. And usually that doesn't matter if you're in a nursing home or if you need some home health care. Usually the qualifiers are if you can't perform 2 of 6 activities of daily living, you get that extra long-term care benefit. Now, some annuities will charge an extra fee simply for the rider itself. Some don't. And so it's just all a matter of finding what works best in your situation. If the benefit is much better for one that may have a fee, it could be worth paying that fee. If not, if there's another one out there that's just as good, if not better, without having to pay a fee, maybe you don't have to pay a fee. And so what that means there, it's just like anytime you've got growth in the annuity or growth on that income rider, that income benefit value, then that means you've got more long-term care benefits that are growing as well. So it could be possible to have long-term care benefits through an annuity. If you've got sufficient enough assets to earmark there and long enough time horizon to wait, you could actually get some extra long-term care protection without having to pay anything out of pocket for it. So that's kind of a cool feature there. And it's almost like, the way I look at it is, that would be long-term care insurance in reverse. It's there if you need it, but if not, you may not have paid anything out of pocket for it if there was no fee for it. So that's my opinion there. Some other, maybe even lesser known options is home equity. You might have some home equity that you could cash out, maybe even possibly I know they talk about reverse mortgages. That might be a solution as well, to be able to get money out of a home while you're still living, to be able to help pay for that. So that's it. Another thing you might think of doing is just collaborate with some of your other family members, right? Round up your siblings and have that planning conversation. Hopefully your family members will share your desire to get proactive about the situation. And ideally the whole group would, kind of collaborate on a go forward basis that protects everyone's assets and ensures that, their parents have access to the care that they need, and that each one of you contributes in whatever way that you can. I mean, maybe it's not all equally because everybody makes different amounts of money, but maybe there's some kind of percentages you can work out, whatever it is, but just have that conversation. You don't want it to come up and then be like, well, shoot, now what do we do? Have some kind of a plan going in. It's like they always say that you should never talk about money, sex, or politics, but guess what? Those things affect so much of our lives. Why aren't we talking about them? And so, who does talk about money? Rich people talk about money. Why do they stay rich? Because they don't look at it as the taboo subject. They look at it as we need to master this in order to have a more fulfilled life. We don't let money master us, we master it. And that becomes being educated about it and having those conversations that other people may not necessarily want to have because they feel a little awkward. Have those conversations. So that's it, guys. So hopefully if you're in those states, maybe that sparked, maybe it lit a fire under your butt to actually have those conversations so that when something does happen, you're now going to have planned for it. So it's not going to hurt nearly as much. And also maybe it has potentially saved some siblings relationships as well, because you've had those conversations beforehand rather than after when emotions might be high. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions on this, once again, just reach out to us. We'll have a link in the show notes and probably in the comments to get a 15-minute phone call with us if you want to talk about some of these avenues that could possibly help out with long-term care. And also I'll include a link to that other podcast episode that I mentioned where we've got the gal that wrote a book called Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, so we can have those types of conversations. Because like I said, long-term care is one of the least planned for areas when involving retirement. And it's a huge, huge risk. If it's not adequately planned for, that can eat through a nest egg pretty darn quick. And then any hopes for any inheritance or anything like that might have just gone to the nursing home facility, right? So we don't want that to happen. We want to bring you enough information to help empower you to live the retirement you deserve. And this is one of the ways we're doing it. So thanks for listening. Tune in again next week when we'll bring you another topic. Take care.